So we're going to start with Ted's, and I'll share my screen and play the video. If you do have questions, type them into the chat room, but I will try to stop it if I see questions coming up. We'll try to either stop about halfway, but if we don't see any questions coming up, we'll just go through and then take questions at the end. Um, but we have enough time to take questions for both of these. And I would like to thank both Ted and John for doing this. They have, it's a lot of work to do these demonstrations, particularly when you have to video them and edit them. And both Ted and John this is multiple times this year that they have offered to do this, and just would like to thank both of them for their commitment to the club and doing this. Like I said, it's a lot of work to make these happen, and I've have previewed both videos, and they're both very well done. So I do appreciate that. And
Thank you.
so um, with that, we'll go ahead and I will share my screen here.
We're doing a little bit of woodwork out here,
Can you hear it
preparing
now?
some green wood
Yes.
that we just got. It's not a perfect workshop, but a work in progress.
We can hear
Yes.
Steve.
Hopefully, you'll see some things that'll give you ideas for your workshop, and maybe you'll have some ideas for me for my workshop as well by seeing this. So, kind of hot out here today, so let's go inside and take a look. Ah, a lot cooler in here. Feels good. So this is the inside of the shop. It's a 20 by 20 shop. When we first got this shop, the walls were bare essentially. It was just 2x4 frame in there. The windows were in place already, which are great because we use those for cross ventilation in here in the summertime. But we insulated the whole place, and we actually put electrical in, so we have electrical above the workbench all the way around. So there was a plug here and there, but we put some more electrical plugs in it. Insulated and plywood the ceiling and plywood the walls, and then put pegboard wherever we thought we could utilize hanging things on the wall. Did all of that before we moved any equipment and so forth in there. The other part is the ceiling lights. So it was fluorescent lighting. There was 3 or 4 strips in here when we got it. I put those back in, but then I bought a couple LED lights, and after I put those in, I was sold on them. It made a huge difference, not only in brightness, but the quality of the light actually was so much better. So that's the inside, the basic inside of it. And then the next step really is to talk a little bit about storage in the attic. I have a walk-up attic, and I'll show you a little bit of that as well. So storage in the workshop, I got storage of my finishes down over here, and over on this side I got a little shelving unit that has all the same kind of stuff in it on that. And then up above here, I've got my manuals and stuff that I keep up here. So I've got glass vases and so forth. Some of these are tools and so forth I store up here. And as you can see, pegboard laid out here on the wall. I'll talk a little bit more about some of that later. Got storage down here. I've got paper bags that I use for drying materials and so forth, and I throw some materials in there sometimes for dry. And then we've got all these drawers down here, and they're labeled. I got a drawer full of extra chucks and so forth, or accessories for chucks are in there, air tools and plastic bags, embellishments and stuff over here, and carving stuff down there in that bottom drawer. Okay, so over here, I built a storage rack to store plywood and miscellaneous flat boards and so forth because, I do other projects besides wood turning, and I needed a place to store the materials. The first rack it can handle a 4x8 sheet. So that's this section here, which is about a foot wide, and it's enough to handle most of what I want to store. Then this bottom piece is 4x4 size, so I can put up to a 4-foot tall piece in that. This is 2x4, and this is 1x4 at the top. So it works out really well for me. You can see I've got different size pieces of plywood in there. And then in front of that, I've got an old garden rack, and I put my materials on here after I turn them and I want to dry them, especially my hollowing ones, because they're ready in 2, 3, 4 weeks time. So I can put them on this rack and get back to them fairly soon then, and it's wire mesh, so it has time to dry out. Over here, this cabinet really supports these two grinders, and down below it, we've got some clamps and so forth. Over here on the top, I've got some pieces for storage that I've turned some of those pieces. Some of them are for boxes. And then I've got some small hand equipment stored over here. Router bits, jigsaw, hand planers, belt sander, router up in the corner there. Oh, this is a good thing to point out now. I'm back here, also storage for my Forstner bits I set up on the wall. This cabinet is our workbench, so we do a lot of work over here. Alex does a lot of jewelry making, and this is really his center for doing that work. And then we've got cabinets, drawers down here, I should say, with sandpaper, sanders, drills, measuring equipment, devices, and so forth. And then there's a lot of hand tools, as you can see, stored on here as well along there, and some more shelves up here with some different things. Over on this side, more turned, roughed out objects. I've got some nice burl wood up there that's been drying for several years. It's ready to come down and be finished. And then some materials for boxes and so forth. And then last is our refreshment storage for our ice cream bars and popsicles. We looked at the storage down there. Let's go up in the attic and look at the storage up there. Little latch there on the door to hold it up for us. Come on up. Here's my lights. Just installed those LED, the old fluorescent light there on the side. So I've got a lot of flat work up here stored. So, 2x4s, and I got a trim rack over there on the side. This is the planer I have. I haven't actually used it yet. I just acquired this extra shop vacs and so forth. Some of my wood. I've got small wood pieces in here to be turned, and there's some stuff in these bags that is turned and is drying in this rack. A few extra tools stored in this rack. My air compressor sits up here, so I don't have to listen to the noise from that, and I've got a near line that goes down there. And then this rack here is full of wood burls. I got to get to work on that and start turning them. And down on this end then I've got a few more tools, some extra lathe tools, hollowing tools, buffing tools. That's it for up here. Let's go back downstairs. You can see it's a little bit warm up here in the attic. So let's go back downstairs. So let's talk about the placement of the tools in here and how I have things laid out. And the fact that it's a small shop means that things have to be portable. We have a workbench over here. This is Alex's jewelry making station. This is a piece of corian we have up here, so nice flat hard surface that he can work on. He's got some sandpaper tape down there. And then we have this portable workstation here for him. So all we gotta do is pop these wheels down here, and we can move this any place we want to. So it's easily portable. We've got a disc sander on here, a small belt sander on the front, and a saber saw over here, and a pole sander down here on the bottom. And we have a vacuum system hooked up to it, so we can hook onto it to vacuum while we're running any of these here. We hook to our vacuum system, which I'll introduce in a few minutes to make that all work. Over here in the middle, we have a work table. I use this mainly for finishing, but this is also portable, so it's on wheels, and we can move this any place in the shop that we need it. If we're working over here and we want to have that close by, we can move this around to wherever we need it to placing it. We use it also or a place to hold tools and so forth for us while we're working on this, which is one of our lathe stations. And then we have over here the other lathe, small lathe. I use this mainly for buffing, but we do small work like jewelry, rings. And then the workhorse, really, this is the one that I use the most, this lathe, and everything is set up around it. And I'll take you through that in more detail in a few minutes. Over here, I've got some hooks in the ceiling for drying my pieces. If I have a hollow form that I've done, and I can hang it up there on these racks, so I got 3 or 4 hooks in the ceiling here. I got some over there too, that I can hang stuff on. If I'm doing a bunch of pieces, I can hang those up in the dry. This is a 360 camera mount, so you'll see some views of that in the video as we progress along. But we just made that out of a simple piece of plywood with a 1/4 inch by 20 bolt through it. My air filtration system here to help keep the dust down. And then we just installed that a month or so ago. And then over on this side on the ceiling, while we're on the ceiling, is my heater. So this is an electric heater, and in the winter time, we're insulated, but it still can get kind of cold out here. So this is my dust collection system right now, but I put this dust deputy in here, Oneida dust deputy, and it's really helped quite a bit actually, because it filters out all the dust in the sawdust and so forth, puts it down here in a 5-gallon bucket. And then I've got this hooked on here with a 2.5 inch coming out the bottom, and then 1.25 inch line coming out of the top of it. And I hook that to my orbiting sander that I use for sanding on the outside of pieces. I use this quite a bit for that. And then the big hose is hooked here to the other end, and I have magnets on this, and I can place this either right here or on top, or a lot of times I put it right on my tool rest, and wherever I move my tool rest, my vacuum cleaner moves with me. And then the second part of having this here is it's a quick disconnect that I have set up on this, and I can hook this on over here to this vacuum piece, easy enough, just couple that in to it. And it has now have vacuum hooked up to the belt sander, but if I move the hose over here, it hooks up to the disc sander, and we have a switch down here on the floor that we just hit the switch, and the vacuum cleaner turns on for us. So it helps. As you can see, we still have quite a bit of dust, but it helps. We probably get 80% of the dust right now, and we're working towards getting 95 or better percent of the dust. And like I said, it's work in progress around here. So everything is placed pretty well in here for us to work and get 80% of our work done, but occasionally it's not. Occasionally we need to move things around. Let me show you a few samples of that, of some of the mobility we have. This is how I get my big wood in. So I can open up both these doors and get my cart and bring the big stuff in. I can bring it over here to work on my bandsaw. So move a few things around in less than a minute. We got the table saw out and it's ready to be used. So if I wanted to process some bigger wood on the bandsaw, I can move that table back if I had wanted to work in here with some bigger stuff. When I'm done, shove it back over there where I got it from. Done. So let's take a look at this lathe, my lathe number 2. Just recently acquired this lathe. It's a 3520, so it has a 20-inch swing on it. I've got my gouges set up over here. They're on a mobile stand, so I can move them around. I've got these pads on the floor here, and you'll see these in front of all the lathes. So when you're standing for a long time at the lathe, these make a huge difference. And they're just interlocking, so I can add or take away from them pieces of foam matting, and it works really well. But this lathe is a bigger lathe. It's a little heavier duty than my Laguna lathe. And one of the things I do like about it is the mobility of the on-off switch. So I can put it on in the front here, and I can run my lathe from up front here. Really good for coring, because my other one I have to reach over the top to shut it off. I've got 2 banjos on it. When you're working on big stuff, having a banjo on the back side and a banjo on the front side makes a big difference, because a lot of times you can't get the banjo underneath the material. You need to do some work on the back side of it. But I was talking about doing this for coring, so why don't I show you how I set it up for coring so you can see what that looks like. So here I have it set up for coring. I wanted to show you that this is kind of in the way to work in here. So with this lathe, I can move this down here to the end, loosen this up, and then swing this away. So then I can have this set up with my coring tool. When I'm coring with the tool, as I move along here, so I'm outside the bowl, and as I move into the bowl, you can see, I can see exactly where I'm at. And there I can mark lines out here, which I normally do for the bottom. So I might have a line saying that's where I want the tool to come out on the bottom. And I can see this line spinning as the bowl's going, and then I can visualize all the way in there. It's got plenty of power for me to do that. I have, again, 2 rests, so I can do work on the back side if I need to do that, and I don't have to take the piece back off there to do any work on it. So that's how I set up for coring. My McNaughton coring system on it with a camera mounted on the unit on it, and my visualizer over here. My tailstock swung out of the way, and I can do all my coring set up on here. Next, I'll show you how I do hollowing. So now I have it set up for hollowing, and so I've got visualizer set up. You can see my tool there. However, working at it like this, I'm working kind of across the lathe here, and things are kind of in the way. So with the tailstock swung out, I can now take and move this whole thing down, my headstock down as well to where I want to be. So now I can work on this, and I can work from the end of it, so I can work in here like that with the tool, back and forth however I want to. So when I'm either coring or hollowing, I can turn on the lathe right here, and I don't have to reach over the top of it. So last thing I want to show you on this is where I store my hollowing system, the visualizer and so forth. And so I'll take this over there and show you right now. And my screen's right here. Anyways, that's how lathe 2 is set up. And the next thing up, I'll show you a little bit about how I have lathe number 1 set up. Lathe number 1, this is how I have it set up in here. I use this lathe most of the time. I've got 2 halogen lights here to help light everything up. Works really well. I've got my tool rack up here with my tools so I can see the ends of my tools. I've got my shield up here for my face mask. I've got my sandpaper set up here, the 5-inch pieces, and you can see the labels I have on them, what size they are across there. If I'm standing on the outside, I use my 5-inch. If I'm standing on the inside, I have my 2-inch or 3-inch. They're quick couplers. Then I've got some of my chucks set up over here, my air compressor line with my for my air sander or for blowing things out and so forth. Then this is just miscellaneous other stuff, you know, some of my parting tools and so forth are on there, some of my drives. I've got additional drives, headstock drives, 4-point drives, and multi-point drives here. I got my main tool rest that I put in here all the time. And then over on the side here, I've got my hollowing tools. You can see I got a whole slew of them down here that I use just depending on what I'm doing. Here I have my mask and headphones, and so whenever I'm sanding and sometimes when I'm turning, depending on what I'm turning, I've got this mask on all the time. I've got the vacuum cleaner, of course, going, and my headphones to protect my ears. Underneath I've got this barrel, and this saves me a lot, so I move this around a little bit. Yeah, you can see it's half full of chips right now. I just emptied it yesterday. For hollowing, I do have to lift this off here, but this slides off the end. That headstock moves down here as well, so I can work here on the end with my hollowing tools right here to get things done. So that's about it inside the shop. Probably the only thing left to show you is how I prepare some of the wood, the area that I do that outside the shop before we bring it in here to actually start turning the wood. The last area we want to look at is outside and where I prepare the wood before we bring it into the shop and do the work on the lathe. So I've got these blocks here. Over here I've got a wood rack So once I cut the wood up, and sometimes I seal the end, sometimes I don't, I can stack it up here so you can see I got quite a bit of wood stacked up here. Then I've got some wood here that's not on the rack, still hasn't been really cut up, but a lot of these I use for hollowing, and so I don't do anything more than come out here and whack a piece off and take it in the shop. But I've got these blocks set up here, and I can take a block of wood if I want to cut it in half. I can put it on my rack, and I can use these, I just use these wedges here, take my chainsaw, cut it in half or whatever I'm going to do. All my mess and stuff stays out here. Chainsaw's outside, essentially not in the shop. So that's one area of my wood process. Let me show you some wood that I do have processed, cut up, essentially in more of a plank type forms that I keep behind the shop. So this is the wood pile I have of processed wood. You can see I've got a lot of wood here right now, but some of this isn't dry yet. I got some of this last fall. It's ash. I've got all the way down about 20 feet of wood that's stacked up in here right now. Down there, that stuff's all dry and ready to go. This is still drying out. So I've got enough wood here to last me for a couple of years at least, and I should stop getting wood because I've got more than I can handle right now. So that's the tour of my shop. We did the outside and the inside, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you got something out of it that will help you in your workshop. Maybe you have some ideas for me, that'd be great too. Most everything I've got in there is because I learned from other people, and so I hope that you can learn something from me. Thanks for watching, and happy turning. Yeah, hey Steve, before we go to the next video, well, we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah,
If anybody has any questions.
Stefan had a question for you.
The coring system, the extension to that and so forth, that's so I have the hollowing system from Trent Bosch, and I thought, why couldn't I adapt that to coring? You know, use the same system for that, so I know where that my blade and the coring system's coming out. So I worked on it quite a bit, and I wasn't able to achieve what I was hoping for, because the camera, as the camera is pointing straight down at the piece, the camera actually wasn't centered. And with hollowing, you're fairly close to the piece. It wasn't mattering that much. But with coring, when you have a bigger bowl, you know, usually I've got a 15, 20-inch piece on there at least that I'm starting with. You're a lot further away from it with the camera. And if the camera is shooting at an angle instead of straight down, your trajectory is off. So I actually had several meetings with Trent on it, and we finally essentially figured out a way to redo the whole camera angle and the screen shot coming from the bottom instead of from the side like you normally would. Once I started coming up from the bottom with my trajectory and my coring, the angle didn't matter so much because I was aligned with the bottom then. I don't know if I'm explaining it properly, but you know, as you're coming in like this, my camera is now lined up with that angle instead of before my camera was lined up with this angle on the entry. And so once I lined the camera up here, and so when I come in with a blade, and when it really mattered was right here, and that's where the camera angle was straight down then, it started working out for me quite well. And so now all I do is mark out on the bowl a ring on it where I want that blade to end up. And when I go in to it, I'm watching for that line, and I can see where my blade's going. And if I need to, I just pull the blade a little bit more so I come out and come into that bottom like that. So I don't know if that answers the question, Stefan, for you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yep.
Lan Brady wanted to know how you lift the large logs onto the storage rack.
Onto the storage rack. Oh.
Besides your building, you had one that was 20-inch diameter, 2 foot long.
Yeah.
You didn't just pop that up there.
With a huff and a puff. Yeah, they can get pretty heavy. I don't know if you notice those logs we have out front, but one of them is about 20 inches big around and about 5 feet long, and you know, you don't lift that up. We roll that off a trailer, and that's actually for a project. My son, he's in his senior year in college, and he's using that for a thesis. So it's still sitting there actually right now, waiting for him to decide how he wants to cut it up. But yeah, those are definitely heavy.
Yeah, do you want to mention your updated dust collection?
Yeah, when I watched the video, I did that video last July, I think it was, that we did the video because we talked about this, and I thought, well, at that time my son was still home, and I thought he was going off to college. I thought, well, he's there, we'll go ahead and do it because I'll have him help me. But he's still here. Didn't go back to school. He's just taking it from home. But yeah, so a lot has changed since then, essentially in almost 6 months' time. So I this past week, actually, I got a Oneida Supercell system, and I installed that in the attic up there. So if you remember, we went up in the attic, the rack I had that was full of burls, I moved that to the other end of the attic, and the Supercell is sitting there now. And then I've got a line running from that Supercell in the attic down through the ceiling and down by my Laguna lathe. And if we have, I could show some pictures of it if you're interested in it. But
Well, John, so people get an idea of the supercell when they see the next video, because it's the unit
yeah,
that John
has that in his.
So they get a
shop.
pretty good idea of
Yeah.
of the
But I
system.
decided to put that up in the attic because of the noise and space both, because I don't have a lot of free space down in the shop area. So I decided I have that, and I have my compressor up there, which are two of the noisiest things. And so I got that noise away from me. And I have the dust collector Supercell all installed now. I just put today the line from the main trunk that comes down to my lathe, and started to hook up to the jewelry station. And then I'll have another hose that will be connected and disconnected when we need it for the table saw and for the band saw and for the other lathe, the other big lathe, whenever we need that. But I probably won't leave it hooked up all the time because I don't have a good way to route it other than along the floor, and I don't want to be tripping over it all the time. So
there was Mark had a question about the effect of attic heat on the air compressor, and Ted, when you and I talked this morning, I had the same question about the supercell. So
yeah.
so have you had any problems with the compressor?
No, I've had the compressor up there for, I guess, about a year now. I think I bought it about a year ago, and it's up there all summer, and I had no issues whatsoever with it up in the attic. It doesn't seem to. I checked it, often, and I use air mostly for sanding and just blowing stuff off. It's got a 30-gallon tank, so it doesn't really have to start up that often. And I really haven't had any problem with that. It does get warm up there, as you saw. It was 100 degrees that day on the thermometer up there, but it hasn't been an issue. And with the dust collector, I talked to Oneida about that before I purchased it, and they didn't see any issue with it whatsoever. The air that goes through the motors in that supercell come from the input, the suction. So it goes through and runs it through the spinner, the separator, and then runs it through the HEPA filter, and then it goes to the motors. So it's getting essentially air from my shop, which in the summertime is going to be, air conditioned. So I don't think it'll be a problem either.
And Jeff, why don't you, Jeff Danneman, want to ask your question?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Not so much question, but thought. There is a company called Just Right, and they make a lid for trash cans that you've got full of wood chips, oil-soaked rags, whatever else you've got in your shop. It looks for all the world like a donut cut in half. And you put this on your trash can, you dump whatever you need through that hole. If, or more like when, it catches fire, the concept is the smoke comes up, rolls around in this half a donut and back down, and basically it chokes the fire out. Instead of burning down your whole shop for $39.95, you put one on your 5-gallon bucket. For $79.95, you put one on a 55-gallon barrel. If it catches fire, before you can run and grab the fire extinguisher and get back to it, it's choked itself out. Real cheap insurance, and from experience in a lot of paint laboratories, they work. Again, the company is Just Right. The product is called Ceasefire.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
Ted, where do you finish? Where do you do your finishing work?
I do it on that center table. I do most of my finishing there, and usually now since I did this video, I actually set up another table in my attic, and I'm going to use that for staging some of my finish stuff. But normally what I do is I put my finish on my things at the end of the day. So, you know, I may turn a half a dozen things or something today, and I just set them over on that middle table. At the end of the day, I clean that table off so there's no dust and dirt and stuff on it. I put my finished stuff, you know, whatever finish I'm going to put on them and so forth, and I walk out the door. You know, and I come back the next morning, it's pretty much dry. I can go back to work again, and that night, you know, I can put a finish on the new stuff and a second coat on the previous stuff. And then I got those hooks that I can hang from the ceiling depending on what kind of finish I'm putting on it. If it's a lacquer, normally if I'm doing lacquer, which I don't really like, but I go outside and I spray lacquer on, then I bring it back inside and I hang it up on the hook for it to dry, because the fumes, you know, are quite strong if you're spraying lacquer, you know, indoors. And I don't have a good place to set up an exhaust fan and so forth to do that. If I do have to finish on the lathe, which I do occasionally, I have a box fan, and those double doors that you saw, I just open up one door and I have a hook and I hang a box fan on that hook, and I just turn it on full blast to suck out. And so if I'm spraying lacquer or something, it exhausted out the door fairly quick. But, you know, in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the winter, you know, that's not really much of an option. So I usually go outside, spray it, come back inside and hang it up.
Right. Good. Any other questions?
Someone asked the square footage of the shop. So it's 20 by 20. So that's 400 square foot minus the stairwell, you know, that goes up into the attic. So whatever that, you know, it takes away from it. So, but it actually is pretty adequate. I'd like it to be double that size easily. But I'm very happy to have it.
Good.
Those of us with half a garage tell you to shut up.
Yeah, somebody says, how do you keep it so clean? Well, it's not always. It was that cleaned up so I could do the video. It's not normally so clean.
All right. Well, thank you, Ted. Any final thoughts from anybody before we move on?
Steve, I don't know how it was for everybody else, but the video was quite broken up as we were going along. So I don't know why that is.
I had one spot where it was my fault. About halfway through, I was going to stop and ask you a question, but it. Did anybody else have that problem?
I thought it was very good.
Okay. Good.
I had break up.
It was good.
It was solid for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was pretty good.
Oh, it must be just on my end then.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go to John Vaith. John, do you have any introductory comments here? So you just want to start the video?
No, you can just start the video. And,
Okay. All right. And just as we.
if people have any.
Okay. So those of you may recall, John did our demo just a couple months ago on photography, and you saw a little bit of his shop during that video. But I thought John would be a good representative to do a shop tour, mainly because he faces a challenge that many of us face, in that his shop still has to be a functioning garage. So and we all know that presents some challenges. So I thought it was he has some very good ideas in the way his shop is organized. So with that, I will go ahead and start the video.
Hi everybody, my name is John Vaith and welcome to my shop, also known as my garage. Come on in. I'm going to close the garage door so we don't have all that sunlight streaming in. So my shop is about 550 square feet in total. However, the stairs, the ladders, the refrigerator, the hot water heater, they eat up about 50 square feet. So my usable space is really about 500 square feet. And it's a mobile shop. Everything, all my major tools, with the exception of the lathe, are on wheels. And I can move them around the shop as needed. I do flat work in addition to turning. And if I'm working on a furniture project, this is probably the typical setup that I would use. It makes logical sense in terms of the order in which my work takes place. So for example, I'll do the main cutting on the table saw. I'll come over and I'll join it. If I'm trying to square up the lumber, I'll join it, and then I'll run it through a planer. Now, you say, where's the planer? This is a 6-inch belt sander up here. One of the cool things that I built a while ago that I really like, and it's helped me with floor space, is a flip-top table. And it works really cool. These are both kind of heavy tools, the sander and the planer, but because it's balanced on a flip-top, I can actually turn it over with 2 fingers. There's my planer. Drop it back in, do my planing, and then I'm ready to go. Other tools that I might use for furniture making especially, and sometimes on the lathe, my miter saw, chop saw. The chop saw, because it kicks dust all over the place, it's really hard to capture dust with a chop saw. So what I will generally do is roll it out into the driveway, and I'll do my mitering out there. Just flip the lock on the foot and roll it out. This table also has wings, so if I'm mitering something really long, it makes it easy to accomplish. Other tools in my garage. I have 2 bandsaws, a bit of a luxury, but when I bought the second bandsaw, I decided it was kind of handy to have 2 different blades on either bandsaw. So I do my rough cutting, especially for lathe work with my logs, with a 3 TPI blade on this. This is a 3-horse bandsaw, so nice and powerful. But when I'm doing fine cutting, for example, the wave bowls that I make, I need a very fine blade. This is a 10 TPI blade on the Laguna bandsaw. And this operates off of 110 instead of the other one operates off of 220. Other tools that are kind of handy, my drill press. It's a floor-mounted drill press, and I put it way in the corner because drill presses generally don't need a lot of space around them. If I'm drilling into something really long, obviously I'd roll it out into the middle of the garage, but 99 times out of 100 I can do my drilling right here, and it stays pretty much out of the way. I have a 30-gallon air compressor, which ends up being really handy. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Have a scroll saw mounted on one of my workbenches. I have 2 workbenches. And by the way, even the workbenches are on wheels. The other one's over on that side. And then I have my slow-speed grinder at the other end of the workbench, close to the lathe. Have a little table space for the lathe. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then finally, over in the corner is my dust collector. So those are all the major tools. And as I said, with the exception of the lathe and the dust collector, everything is on wheels, and they can be rolled easily out of the way. So when I'm done for the day, I will just turn my table saw and I'll roll these these tools over to this side of the garage, and my wife can park her car right alongside. And although you may not believe it, but it is possible, I have done it on a couple of occasions, if there's going to be really severe weather, a hurricane or an ice storm or a hailstorm or something like that, I want to get both cars in the garage, and with a little creative movement, it's kind of like a Tetris game, I can actually fit all these tools plus 2 cars inside the garage. So when I bought my first big lathe, the robust here, and it arrived, I had to make a decision of where do I want to put it. And I really didn't want it on wheels because I needed the stability of sitting on a concrete floor. So I decided to put it over in this corner of the garage where I didn't have to roll it out of the way. And then the next decision was, do I mount or do I position it parallel to the wall or perpendicular to the wall? And you know, a lot of people have reasons for doing it either way. I personally like it perpendicular to the wall for this reason. I can reach over and grab my tools very, very easily without having to reach across the lathe while it's spinning or having to shut it off to go get a new tool. So that has actually worked out quite well. And then behind me, I've got a cabinet that has some small tools in there. And then I put all of my sandpaper, I cut it into 2 by 3 inch pieces, and then have everything from 80 grit up to 600 grit. And then underneath, I have the disc type sanding for my air tools. I have air tools that I can use for sanding as well. Other tools related to the lathe are mounted on a pegboard on both walls. As you see, it's getting a little bit crowded, but you know, I really like to be able to access things when I need them and not have to hunt for them. So I try to have things displayed and located where I have easy access. Even more sanding in these little drawers. You'll notice as we go around and I talk about organization, I'm a big fan of horizontal storage, and I have drawers in a lot of different locations, including over here. My pencils and accessories for the lathe, chisels, that sort of thing. This is a vacuum generator, which actually uses air pressure from my compressor. It's a Venturi system, so that converts it to a vacuum, and it works really well. And then in the corner, I'll talk about it in a few minutes, are my new dust collector, which I'm really glad I bought and probably should have bought a long time ago. Okay, let's talk for a minute about lighting. If it's a nice summer day, I'll open the garage door and have a lot of nice natural light in here. But a lot of times you need artificial light to make sure that you have enough and adequate lighting for doing what you're doing. My garage happens to be 13 feet high, and I've got 2 4-foot fluorescent fixtures up there. I converted them from fluorescent actually to LED a short time ago, and I really like the quality of the LED light better. It's a little brighter and it's a little more consistent. I never get any flicker. On the other half of the garage, I've actually got these huge compact they call them compact fluorescent, but they're enormous. Each one of those is 300 watts, so that's 600 watts of light coming from those. I will probably eventually replace them with LED, because now really bright LED lights are available as well. But that's worked out quite well to illuminate this front half of the garage. Over the lathe, I even added an additional 4-foot LED fixture, and that really provides lots of really high quality light for when I'm doing my turning. I also have some task lighting here. This is a very bright LED that has a strong magnet, and I can move it all around, but if I need to illuminate the inside of a bowl as I'm turning, that works very well. There are a couple of windows that have curtains over them. I generally leave the curtains closed. I don't like working with bright sunlight just because the shadows get really harsh and it can sometimes be a little hard to differentiate things that you're working on. There's more task lighting over here. So if I'm working at I call this my embellishment bench. If I'm doing grinding or airbrushing or whatever, I've got little LED lights as task lights. Another one over this bench. And then finally, one last thing that I forgot to mention when I was over at the lathe is a little pencil LED. There we go. So when I'm doing hollowing, or if I'm doing a hollow form and I need to see inside, this thing is fantastic for just sticking it inside and seeing how good a job I'm doing in there. So that pretty much covers the lighting. I really like to have a bright shop, with plenty of light. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and when I'm trying to read small detail or work on small detail, having bright light is really helpful. When I first moved in here 17 years ago, I would work in the shop in the winter and in the summer, but it got really uncomfortable on those high humidity days or on the really cold winter days, to the point where I decided, I didn't really want to work in the shop. And a few years ago, I added this window air conditioner / heater. It's a pretty big shop with that 13-foot ceiling, and so it needed to size it pretty high, but this is an 18,000 BTU air conditioner along with a 16,000 BTU heater. And I can keep the shop perfectly comfortable year-round with this device. As a matter of fact, it's 37 degrees outside right now, 67 degrees in my shop, which I find perfectly comfortable. I do put an extra filter in the front, just as dust is flying around the shop. It helps keep the air conditioner nice and clean. Now, let's talk a little bit about organization and storage. I am a big fan of having things out of sight if possible, but organized in such a way that I can easily get at them. So I'm a big fan of cabinets and drawers. I have on both workbenches, this one as well as the one on the other side, there are cabinets and drawers. Even my router table, I built a cabinet underneath it that has drawers inside, including drawers to hold my router bits. And I found some discarded kitchen cabinets one time that were just by the side of the road, and so I was able to get a couple of wall cabinets, this one and one over here, as well as a floor cabinet over here. And I'll show you what I have stored in there. These are glues and paints, spray paints and finishes and cleaning materials. And then in this cabinet, I sectioned the drawers so that all my screws and a few other miscellaneous things are on the left side, and bolts and nuts and washers and things like that are on the right side. Continuing with my theme of horizontal storage, I built a couple of tall drawers here that hold a variety of things, lag screws and so forth. My wrenches and ratchet set. Nails for my power nailers. More bolts, So I won't go through all of these, but you can see it's actually very handy storage. A bunch of files over here, and I can easily access those things. And then here, just like everybody has, you know, those little odds and ends that you don't know where to put. Got lots and lots of space there. More drawers here holding my sandpaper for my random orbit sander. And then a couple of cabinets that I built. So I built this cabinet for my frequently used hand tools primarily, is what's in here, as well as a bunch of acrylic paints that I use when I'm embellishing my work. And I have another cabinet here that in a prior home I built it for a bathroom, but now it's used to hold my planes. More drawers on my embellishment bench, just holding a variety of miscellaneous things. More wood drawers that I made, holding instruction manuals for all of my tools. And then underneath this table, more horizontal storage for a wide variety of things, from thin pieces of veneer, instruction books, and also motivational books, Richard Raffin's Art of Turned Bowls, variety of things that I store under there. So in addition to the lumber rack, which holds all my, as you can see, it holds all my flat lumber, and the things as you get closer to the ceiling, those are pieces that I would use very seldom, but I've got a tall ladder that can enable me to get up there and retrieve those if necessary. Next to the lumber rack are some jigs hanging on the wall, and these are fairly frequently used jigs for both furniture making and on the bandsaw. The one on the right is a circle cutting jig, and I can cut circles on my bandsaw from anywhere from 4 inches in diameter to 6 feet in diameter. And maybe we can talk about that at some future tips and tricks session. But anyway, these jigs primarily used on the table saw. I use fairly frequently, and other jigs that I have built for a specific furniture project, I store them in the attic. I don't even bother leaving them out here just because I'm not going to access them, except maybe once every 5 years. And you've probably already noticed that there are lots and lots of clamps here. And furniture makers know that you never have enough clamps. Doesn't matter how many you have, you don't have enough. You'll use them. So I got clamps here. I've got lots of clamps stored right here, easy access. Clamps on the back wall, clamps on the corner, and also, remember this is a garage, so I have a few garden tools here too, including my trimmer and my leaf blower. So that's generally how I have things organized. As I said, I try to make sure that I put things down. I put things away, don't put them down, put them away. So that I know where my tools are at any moment in time. Nothing I hate worse than not being able to find the tool that I need at the moment that I need it. So let me talk for just a minute about my dust collection strategy. To be perfectly honest, up until recently, it hasn't been a very good strategy. I've had shop vacs to assist with dust collection, and I had a very inexpensive 1 horsepower bag type dust collector with a 5-micron bag. And then I had a big 2-horse Grizzly that also was a bag collector. And the problem with the bag collectors is they don't do a great job of really fine dust, especially when you're doing your finish sanding on your lathe work and that thing is spinning around pretty fast. You want something strong enough to really suck that fine dust. And I've developed a few little wood sensitivities over the years, so I needed something better. I do wear a mask when I'm sanding, but I wanted a dust collector that was really going to capture that fine dust. And I decided to invest in the Oneida Supercell system. It's a relatively new system, and it is fantastic. It is a high pressure dust collection system, uses high pressure hose, and one of the advantages of this, it's ideal for a one-man shop, is that you can extend the hose for quite a distance. They say up to 100 feet, and it will still have excellent suction to handle any one of the tools in my shop. So I chose to have the hose mounted overhead. Since it's a mobile shop, I don't have the luxury of being able to do fixed ductwork, but I don't like having the hose on the floor where I'm tripping over it. So I mount it overhead, and I can move it around, and it'll attach to any one of these tools in my shop. Let me just illustrate that for a second. It is right now connected to my embellishment table, where if I'm grinding, I can be sucking dust away. And I use the Dust Right Quick Connect system from Rockler, which makes it really easy to move this around. So there it is, connected for embellishment, for grinding. And I can move it over here, connect it down there. And now it's actually attached to a 2.5-inch hose on the floor, which is 25 feet. And I can use this for general cleanup anywhere in the shop. It's long enough to take me anywhere I want to go. If I want to connect to my table saw, just lift it up here, and I can move it around and use the quick connect to connect to the table saw. Right there. And then the same thing, I won't bother doing it, but I can connect up to the bandsaws and the planer and the joiner and anywhere I need it. Then, so I will connect it to my lathe, or to the dust hood next to my lathe. And there we go. And I can get this out of the way just by hooking it to a couple of bungee cords. So it's not. I have a remote control here next to the lathe, and I bought a second remote control, so when I'm at my carving table, I can activate it from over there. Due to its proximity to the lathe, I'm usually wearing ear protection when I'm using it, because it gets a little bit loud at times, but it does a fantastic job capturing that very fine dust. When I bought the compressor for the shop, I also bought a retractable hose reel, which I'm really, really pleased with. I mounted it up high, and it enables me to pull the compressed air wherever I need it. Or if I need to pull it out in the driveway, I can, because it's a 50-foot hose. So when I'm cleaning up for the day, and I want to get all the dust off of any tools that I've used, I can use this. I try not to blow too much dust in the garage, because it just kicks up into the air and then settles on everything again. But it's great for the final cleanup. So let me introduce you to my portable spray booth. I went to Lowe's and just picked up some of this rigid insulation and taped it together with some duct tape. So it's kind of a three-fold thing, and I can fold it up and tuck it away in the corner with no problem. But when I want to spray something, whether it's a small item or a big piece of furniture, I will bring it in. I'll put a piece of canvas on the floor. I'll bring it in here. I have a little turntable that I built that is nothing more than black pipe, and then a smaller diameter black pipe sitting in the middle of it, and a couple of flanges holding it all together. But that makes a terrific little turntable. I have much bigger round pieces for big pieces of furniture, but for most of my wood turning, this is perfectly adequate. And then when I'm spraying, I can take this centerpiece out, open the garage door a little bit, and as I'm spraying, it sucks all the fumes. I'm sorry, I put a box fan right behind this, and it'll suck all the fumes away from where I'm working. And it really works terrific. If I can set it up outside, but actually I prefer to set it up just inside the garage, and then the wind doesn't blow it around. You can raise the garage door about halfway, and does a great job of taking care of the fumes, regardless of what I'm spraying. I spray with rattle cans, and I also, if I have a big item, I have HVLP, high velocity, low pressure spray system from a company called Erlex. And I highly recommend this thing. It is just terrific, does a great job, and is very easy to use and very portable. So I can take it anywhere in the yard if I want to, or I can use it here in the garage. Let's set it up here so you can see it. So it is, just like a classic spray gun. But as I said, it uses high velocity and low pressure. So I just plug it in, attach my hose to it, and I'm good to go. It's a Teflon coated paint can, so it's really easy to clean, and it's been terrific for small projects as well as large projects. So after I got into wood turning, and learned how to make a basic bowl and do basic hollowing and everything, I think a lot of wood turners like to take it a step further and do some embellishing. So I've really enjoyed watching YouTube videos and seeing some of the presenters at the AAW National Conference and so forth, and so I've invested in a few embellishment tools, and they all sit on this table at the end of my garage. And I've got the big gulp dust hood here, so when I'm doing grinding, it can suck all of the dust and wood chips into my dust collector. If I'm doing airbrushing, I have an airbrush tool right here that connects to my compressor. And there's a water trap on there. There we go. There's a water trap on there, and there's a second water trap on the line, so just to make sure no water gets into my airbrush. The other tool that I use here is a piercing device, this Presto NSK, and it is air powered. It spins at about 350,000 RPM, and the advantage of that high speed, it's essentially a dental drill, but it enables you to do very fine piercing and not have the bit wander while you're doing the piercing. The other tool that I use at this, there we go. The other tool that I use at this table is a mini grinder right here. Now this doesn't spin nearly as fast as the dental drill, but it's great for grinding and removing larger amounts of wood. And I got lots and lots of bits that I've collected that can help me not only grind and pierce and etch, but also there are sanding units there to help me do finish sanding. When I'm doing burning, when I'm wood burning with Burn Master up here, or when I'm piercing creates a lot of smoke as well because the tool spins so fast. I want to suck that air away from me. I don't want to be breathing that burned wood all the time. So that's what the box fan is for. It's just turn it on and it's pulling the air in this direction and getting the smoke away from me. Sometimes I'll also put a filter in front of this just to capture some of that smoke. Okay, it's the end of the day and it's time to move everything around so my wife can get her car back in the garage. So that's what I'll do right now. Really simple, since everything's on wheels, to guide it back into place. That's my shop. This is my happy place. This is where I come all the time to spend a afternoon or a whole day or a whole month. My wife always accuses me of, you're in that shop all the time. And I probably am guilty of that, but also try to balance it with other family activities. But like I said, and I think for most of you, this is our happy place.
All right, thank you, John. Give me 1 second here. We'll get.
Just a comment, after watching these shops, I'm inspired to never go in my garage again and pick up another hobby.
I know it's it's one of those hobbies that never ends. You never have enough, right? You
Yeah,
always
exactly.
want something more, something bigger, something more powerful, and it just goes on and on and on.
I've never seen such clean shops. Mine wasn't that clean when it was new.
I'm a little obsessed about, as I said, I really hate when I can't find a tool. I mean, it just bothers me so much. So I really try to have, it's probably in our house, it's probably the room where I can find things the easiest because I just know where I
Ed
store.
and John, can you both say a word? How much time in the shop do you spend on woodworking and how much time percentage do you spend on upkeep of your shop? No, seriously.
No, it's a great question. I mean, if I'm in the middle of a project, it doesn't look like this. I will guarantee it. I mean, it's kind of a disaster for a while in the middle of a big project, especially. But in answer to your question, I spend a lot of time strategizing where do I want things placed so that I can easily access them. And that's usually at the end of the day, I kind of realize how frustrating it was when I was in the middle of something. And so, there's a better place to put that. There's a better way to organize that. And so I move things around quite a bit. But I would say, the vast majority of my time is actually spent doing the work. And then when I lay in bed at night, I strategize.
John.
Yeah, I would say the same thing is that it's a constant for me. It's constantly thinking about how I can make things more efficient in my shop so that when I am working, I'm not deterred by location of where my tools are and so forth in it. And lately, because I putting in that dust collector, when I look around, there's a lot of dust, a lot more dust than I like to see in the shop. And so, I strategized for John will tell you, I went over and looked at his, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago at least now, that I went over John's and looked at his system. And before John got his, I looked at him for a month or more. I already selected the Supercell, but I wanted to see it live then, And then I strategized for a couple of months on where I was going to place it and how I was going to place it and how I was going to run the piping. And I changed it a half a dozen times, you know, and I spent the last 3 days just putting in that dust collector. And so this past week, almost 2 weeks now, I'd say I haven't done any turning at all. I've just been spending it on redesigning and doing the shop, move stuff around the attic to accommodate that. And I actually ordered some more cabinets that I'll be putting in the next couple of weeks as well to try to get things organized a little bit better. So when I look at that video, like I said, I did it in July. My shop doesn't look the same as that. You know, I've moved quite a bit of stuff around since then.
You know, getting back to organization and cleanliness, when I retired, I probably spent the first month after I retired in my shop, did very little turning, but I spent a lot of time organizing and culling through stuff. But I found that it's much easier to keep my shop clean with it organized, because everything that now has a place. And like John and Ted, I tend to very much now at the end of the day, I usually have my shop clean. At least I have the tools put away. I don't always sweep under my lathe, but the tools are put away and the tools are clean. And you can walk through the shop. And so the one thing I don't do all the time is necessarily clean up on the floor the shavings, but having a place to put everything certainly makes it easier to keep the shop clean and organized, and also having a good dust collector, so you can, you know, and having your broom handy, you know, those types of things. If you know where things are and where they go, it's much easier to keep your shop clean and organized.
I have a question about dust collection. So I see you've got the Oneida Supercell system with a cyclone collector. I have a defined hard dust collection system with galvanized pipe and plastic pipe, no corrugated obstructions. It's just underpowered at 3/4 horsepower. But it does, I did put the optional, you know, 0.5 micron filter on it. So do I really need the cyclone system for wood turning? I would think that, you know, the cyclone is really for large chips, like I'll get off a planer or a table saw. You mentioned that your Supercell was really good for fine particles off the lathe.
This is Steve. Let me just, and we actually had a whole session on dust collection recently, but the key for wood turners and dust collection is that you really need a sub-micron filter. A 5 micron bag is, and even anything that's a bag is probably not going to give you the filtration you need. So do you have a pleated filter, or is it a bag?
I have a plastic bag below, but a pleated filter above.
Okay. The wind filter. So there's two things you need. So it sounds like if it's 0.5 micron, it's probably the wind filter, which is actually a pretty good filter. But so you need to move volume, but the cyclone keeps your filters cleaner. So it because the filters lose efficiency once they start getting clogged up. So and the finer the filters, the faster it's going to get clogged up with dust if you don't have a cyclone on it. So that's and if you'd like to reach out, I mean, I've actually helped a number of people with their dust collection systems, and I've given several demos on it. So if you'd like to reach out to me directly, I will. I'll certainly help you out here. But it's the cyclone does help keep your filters clean and operating efficiently, even for wood turners.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add one comment to that, is that I really didn't get the Supercell for the wood chips. Those go to the floor, and they probably still will. I got it mostly for the dust. So when I'm sanding, or if I'm turning some certain type of dry wood, especially, just creates a lot of dust just turning it. And that's really what I got it for, is to collect that dust away. The chips, I have that barrel below my lathe, and I try to get about 80% of them into that barrel when I can, you know, or they're there and I can just pick them up with a broom and dustpan easy enough. I don't worry about that. What I care about is the dust.
And the key with the basic concept of dust collection is you have to have enough velocity of air to capture the dust at its source. And that's, for turners, it's at the lathe, but it's you need volume of air moving in order to get that dust captured so it doesn't get up into the air. So,
Yeah,
but again, if you'd like to reach out, I have an Oneida Cyclone in my shop, a 3 horsepower Cyclone, and there's different ways of doing it. But that Supercell is a great machine for a single point pickup. But feel free to reach out to me directly if you want to talk about that further.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
If a question for John Vath, if he would be willing to share. I don't have any heat or air conditioning in my garage, and I'm wondering what it cost you to put that heat/air conditioning unit into your garage.
So that's a great question, Dick. I looked at the mini split systems, and those are kind of expensive. I mean, it was going to be at least $4,000 for me to install that. So that's why I went to the window type unit, and I found one that is both air conditioner and heater. That's made by Cold Front, and it highly rated actually. And I bought it on I think it's called appliance.com or something like that. It cost me, I believe, about $660 for the unit. And as I say, it's a pretty hefty unit just because the height of the ceiling and the size of the garage. You probably, and if you don't have that high a ceiling, you wouldn't need 18,500 BTU. But yeah, it was not cheap, but a whole lot less expensive than the mini split.
Yeah, my garage height was 20.
I have the Cold Front, just the 12,000 BTU. I've forgotten what the heat is, but it works great in our garage. And we have a normal height ceiling, but the one thing I have to do every spring is clean the coils on the outside. But other than that, it has worked great. I had it for 4 years now.
You may have noticed it, LF, that I put a filter, like a furnace filter, right in front of the thing. So it helps it doesn't totally keep the coils clean, but it probably takes 90% of it.
Yeah, I saw that, and I'll have that tomorrow. But the outside coils is where I have problems with the Cold Front. If I don't use a spray cleaner on them, it just doesn't cool right in the spring. But I really like that external filter you had. That's a great idea. I'm going to do that.
That's a good tip, LF, because my air conditioner is not as big. I think it's 8 or 10,000 BTU, but I noticed this year it wasn't as efficient as it was last year. And so I'll check on that next spring as well on the outside coils. I didn't think about that would be a problem, but maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah, just go to Lowe's. They have a spray that works really great. It's supposed to be self-rinsing, but if you spray it in and just soak everything really good and then take a garden hose, it really improves the performance.
Okay, thanks for that. Hey, John, is your unit a 220 unit?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I thought so, being that large. I got the biggest one I could get with 110. So
it's 30 amps too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had to add a 220 circuit for mine too. I had an 8,000 for years with just the air conditioning, and finally it died. And well, yeah, it died. It was kind of like I knew I needed heat from the same unit, but its cooling capacity really did go down. And the Cold Front has worked really good for a very reasonable price.
I've been very happy with it.
So just a editorial comment here for the membership. So when we picked these two shops, we wanted to show these are fairly high-end shops, and you don't obviously don't need to go to this extent to turn. I mean, you can start as much smaller, but one of the reasons I wanted to show that it's just a variety of ideas and space utilization and things like heating and air conditioning and lighting. And so the point isn't that to really show this is what you need for a shop, but hopefully there's bits and pieces of this that you can take off and say, yeah, I have that problem in my shop, and that's that's a good idea how to solve that one issue. Or so but there's a lot of ways to do things, and again, I mean, some of us we're fortunate to have the space that we can commit to doing it, and then the other resources to get some of the toys. But you can certainly set up an organized shop with far less space.
Oh, you had to say organized, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, the key is that it took me a long time to get here, but with woodwork with my shop, but what I found was I got tired of tripping over things, and I read an article one time several years ago about that the first thing that you do when you walk into your shop should be to put three things away. Every time you walk in, grab three things that aren't where they should be and put them away. And now I really try to before I'm done at the end of the day and I don't, like I said, I don't always do it, but I feel better when I do it, when I just get disciplined enough to at least have most of the stuff put away. Or if I'm doing a project somewhere else, that's not turning. Like yesterday I had the chainsaw out. At the end of the day, I took the time to clean the chainsaw. And get it put away rather than just dumping it on a bench before I left the shop. So those types of things, and it does make it a more pleasant place to be.
Hey,
I definitely want to change, because somehow I had gotten it backwards. I just always put down instead of put up.
It's just so easy.
One thing, and I think that they're still available. Costco has those LED shop lights right now on sale for $20, and they come with automatic on detector. So you detect when you walk in the room, and they come on automatically, and a remote control for $20. And I bought 4 more of those lights, and I put one up in my attic. So when I walk up the stairs in my attic now, I don't have to wait till I get up there and pull the chain or whatever to turn the light on. It comes on automatically for me when I go up there. So if you guys are looking at upgrades and lights, it's a great deal right now that they have on sale.
Ted, I was just at Costco today and picked up 2, and they only had about 8 left, at least on the floor. I don't know if they have any in the back.
Yeah.
But, that's because they're beautiful. They work great.
Yeah, they're super. And they have a cover on them too. The other lights I had before, they're just the bulbs, like fluorescent 2 bulbs showing up. They're LED bulbs, but these have a cover on them, and they're brighter than the other ones as well. So they're real bright, and with the remote control, you can dim them and everything. They're really cool light for $20.
I can add that the Cyclone, going back to what we were talking about before, I added a Cyclone with a 5-gallon paint bucket to my shop vac. So I use the shop vac for a lot of the smaller tools that, I didn't want to run tubing from the big one. And before I bought the Cyclone, a day I'd be changing the canister filter inside the thing, taking it outside and backing it out. And I've had that thing running now for probably 3 months. I mean, the fine dust does drop down in the Cyclone too. It just absolutely saves the filters.
Right.
Yep, I found the same thing, Ray. That's what first step I took too, was on my shop vac, as I put that Cyclone on that you saw in the video, and it works great. I mean, the filter in the shop vac, like you said, stays pretty clean.
Well, Home Depot sells a $35 topper for a 5-gallon bucket. Does the same thing. That has a cyclone effect. It basically spins the dust before it hits your vacuum.
Yeah,
Right.
I had one of those, but I'll tell you, Norm, they don't work as well as a cyclone by
For
any
30,
means.
well, $35 versus
99.
yeah.
Well, unless you build your own cyclone. That's what I did for I have a little shop vac and I have it set up to control the dust at my spindle sander and my chop saw. And it's on a remote control. So when I turn one of those tools on, it turns the dust collector on at the same time. And otherwise, I probably wouldn't turn it on half the time I use the tools. So that was a big improvement. And that cyclone, you're right. I rarely have to clean the filter inside the shop vac.
I did
So-
find if you take the cyclone apart inside your shop, it's counterproductive.
So
Been
I
there,
wanted to
done
ask
that.
for an ambient air filter. I mean, clearly for my main dust collection, I need a cyclone and higher volume. I also have a jet ceiling mounted ambient air filter. I did not want to spend I don't know what it was, $150 for the toxic chemicals filter on that. So I just went out and bought I don't know if it's a HEPA or other filter. I have a second filter that I swing down on my ceiling mounted jet ambient air filter, and it does a wonderful job. If I'm doing finishing in the best basement, as mentioned in the demo, yeah, something nasty, smelly like lacquer, I'll take it outside. But for standard, tongue oil and varnish, the second filter does a wonderful job of taking the particulates out of the air and not bothering my wife upstairs.
Is that a carbon filter meant for that, or is it just another dust filter?
I'm not sure. It's not carbon. I have a pleated filter on the standard jet ambient air. Maybe I don't know if it's carbon or HEPA. It's basically $20. Like 14 by 24. You can buy them the same size as your standard ambient air filter. And I just swing it down from the ceiling, and it does a great job of adding additional, chemical filter.
Right. Yeah, I find I have one of those too in my ceiling. I use it a lot when I'm doing burning, either fractal burning or wood burning, because I don't want to take a chance of sucking a hot ember into my dust collector. So, but I'll use the overhead ambient, and it does a pretty good job at getting rid of the smoke.
Good.
All
You
right.
can't fool my wife on the cigars, though.
All right. Well, if that's any other questions, final comments, we're about out of our time here. All right. So we do have a show and tell next Thursday night, starting at 7 o'clock. We will open it up a half an hour early again for some socializing. Please, if you're going to submit to the show and tell, follow the guidelines that'll be in the announcement that we talked about last meeting. Most important is that they need to be submitted by 6 p.m. on Wednesday. And anything after that, I'll just have to go to the next month, because it just takes us that much time to get these things set up.
Have to wait a whole year.
Yeah. We're going to push you off to next year. So we hope to see everybody next Thursday night. And the show and tells have gotten to be a real positive, a real fun meeting, and pretty casual. So I hope you all participate and send in your submittals. And even if you don't submit, just join us and have a good time looking at other people's work. So with that, yeah.
You haven't yet paid your dues. What was the size picture limitation?
You should be able to get them down under a megabyte.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, and I'll say it again, just everybody, please pay your dues. we really need it. We really need that done in order to continue the planning for next year. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you Thursday.
All righty.
Good night.
All right.